What's going on, everybody? My name is Jason with TN Mountain Homestead channel, and today I wanted to switch gears a little bit, get away from the mud mower build for a couple days, and do something a little bit different. Today I want to showcase what we call the pump house. Stay tuned, more in a minute. So a little bit of a brief overview of this pump house. As far as I know, it's been here since the mid-70s. I don't know about the structure, but what's underneath it. Underneath it is a septic tank, a concrete septic tank with a steel liner. Now, as far as I know, or I could tell from when we first moved here, what they used to do, and I say they as in whoever lived here before us, there was a couple different people as far as I know, but they used to pump water from the creek into one side of the septic tank, the smaller side. It's divided with a concrete wall inside of it. Anyways, what they would do is they would pump water into that smaller side, assuming the structure wasn't on top of it, because I don't know that. It seems to be newer than that. But the smaller side of the septic tank was filled with a grainy kind of white quartz sand, if you will, with gravel in the bottom of it. And I think they used that as a filter medium. So they'd pump water out of the creek through that filter medium. It would go down and it would leach through that stuff, and it would come out. There's 2 or 3 holes in that dividing wall in the septic tank, and then it would fill up the other side of the septic tank, which is a lot larger, and that would be your more or less purified water. And then from there they would pump it into the house or use it as they thought, fit. Anyways, I'll be back in a minute. We'll start looking at some of this stuff. I'll show you inside, show you around, and show you how we pick up water out of the creek now. So come on in. I'm going to show you around inside here. All right. So as I was explaining in the earlier in the intro, this here, what I'm standing on, is the top of a septic tank. Now, this was never used as a septic tank. There was never any kind of waste in this or anything like that. It was put here to do exactly what we're still using it for, and that's to basically store water and then send it in the house. So, this here, I made this cover for this opening because there used to be, similar to this side right here, well, I can pick that up, but I'm not going to do it right this minute. But this is a concrete cover, and it fits down in that opening. Now, for ease of access and use, I took this one out and got rid of it. It's actually sitting out there somewhere. It's got a big piece broken off of it, whatever. But this here is the smaller side of the septic tank. That over there is the larger side behind me. About where I'm standing, right where my foot is, there's a concrete divider in the middle of this thing, and the only thing that connects the two sides are a few holes in the bottom of it. Now what we do is, you kind of look around this room, kind of start. So this side of the room here, starting from this pump, which we call pump 2, from here around all the way to where it goes down through the floor here, is the what we call the Creekside, or the intake side of the system. So this we use a jet pump, a shallow well jet pump, and that pipe goes outside. It goes underground. I'll show you that in a minute, and it draws water from the creek. There's a foot valve in the creek, and so this pump pulls water out of the creek, sends it through this pipe to this first filter, which is we run a 25 or a 20 to 25 micron, depending on what deals we get. So we buy our filters in bulk. And then it goes here through a 5 micron filter. And then it goes down, and if you can see down in there, there's that PVC pipe. It's in the shape of a square. And what I've done is I drilled probably 100 holes in that, in small holes, so that when it fills the tank, it's not just coming out 100 miles an hour and stirring everything up. It comes out nice and slow. It fills the tank easy. So that's all it is. And give me a minute. We're going to reset and I'll show you the other side. This side of the room is what we call the house side. Now, we have another identical pump to pump 2. This is the pump that sucks water out of the creek. This pump here we labeled pump 1. And this pump here goes down through the floor and it has a foot valve down there. And I've got it inside of a piece of 4-inch pipe, a foot valve, and it's got some sediment netting on it. Not that there's much sediment, but in case anything ever happened, it's not going to suck up a bunch of stuff. So it picks up water from the tank, and then it pushes it into this pressure tank. I believe this is a 30-gallon unit, and then it sends water through this filter, which is typically a 25 or a 20 micron, same as that one over there that we showed on the Creekside system. And then I've got here an Aquasana set up. This is for purifying well water. So it's got a 20-inch filter, not sure of the microns. Then it goes through this. I believe this is a charcoal filter, maybe. I don't even know what it is, I'll be honest with you. I bought it online a couple of years ago, and that's what it is. This is supposed to take, I guess, sulfur, iron, I don't know, any kind of chlorine. I doubt chlorine, that's city water. This is a well water system. Whatever this here tank does, it's still doing it. So then after it goes through here, it comes down and it hits this, which I believe is currently we have a 1 micron filter in this one. Usually it's a 5, but we went down to 1. And it works pretty good. And then this here is a UV light. And then it ultimately goes down through these pipes here over to the house. Now let me regroup and we'll be back in a minute. When we originally moved here, this structure was here. The tank was here, the structure was here. I'm going to put some pictures in what I'm talking about of when we first moved here and experienced this structure, this tank. Now, all it ever had out here when we moved in was a pressure tank on the floor in the corner with a small black pump on top of it, and then it had literally some black flexible irrigation line going outside just on top of the dirt. It froze in the winter. That happened to us the very first 2 weeks we were here, and it had a foot valve visible in the creek. How that thing operated, because the pressure tank originally, the bladder in it was completely shot when I ultimately got into it and started digging through this place. I don't even know how it used to, the motor used to even kick on. We turned a faucet on in the house and it would run. It would instantly kick on and run as long as somebody was using water. It was pretty, he must have had the pressure switch on the pump dialed all the way as sensitive it could be. Anyway, we didn't even know this place was here. I didn't. When we came and looked at the property, I just assumed this place had a well. This structure was literally covered in vines to the point where there was 2 sapling trees growing off the roof. It was covered in vines. You couldn't see it if you didn't know it was there. Like, quite literally. The inside of this place was never like this. This is all, I've redone this. I had to fix a bunch of the 2x4s. They were eaten by termites and just from being covered in vines and all the moisture in this place, the 2x4s were rotting out. I reskinned it with OSB and some wood to hide some of these 1x to hide the seams. There used to be a ceiling in here. It was completely enclosed inside here, and he had insulation in between the metal skin, and he also had OSB inside this place, but it had a ceiling too. Now, it was very damp in here, and there was bats living up here. There was vines growing through the inside of the roof where you couldn't see. The vines were tearing this place apart. The metal was getting peeled back. It was horrible. Anyway, that's a little brief overview. And the electrical was a single Romex 120 volts that came out here from the house, and he had it inside of a garden hose, just buried about maybe a couple inches below the grade. So since then, I've added a panel, which I fed from the shop. I believe it's on an 80 amp 2-pole circuit. I've got full electrical out here. It's done right. I did all the plumbing myself. All this PVC, I mean, it's not too complicated. You know, it really isn't. It's just, you know, kind of jack of all trades, master of one type deal. I have added a frost-proof hose spigot on the outside. You'll see that when we're walking around. And just a few other, you know, we painted obviously in here. We got some good lighting. There used to be just one little light bulb in the middle of this place. It was pretty creepy in here, I won't lie. Now, I built these steel tables originally, not intending for 2 pumps to be on here. It originally had 1, but this is just a piece of 3/16 plate with some unistrut. I slapped that together in the driveway about 3 years ago. Also, this table here, I built this to hold this pressure tank. And of course, it ain't never gonna go nowhere. There's no reason, you know, it's not, you know, it's overbuilt, but it's worth it. Haven't had any issues from this place. Now, when you put a draw, it's the same thing. I believe it's as a well system. So the tank, so this pump will kick on and charge this tank when it gets down to about 25 or 30 psi, I forget, and then it charges up to 55 pounds of water pressure. Now, we haven't had any issues out of this system. I mean, all we got to ever do is change the filter. We can walk out of here, close the door, and we'll talk about the condition of the creek later. But there's a float valve in the tank that I've connected to this switch here. So this pump, like I said before, sucks water from the creek. As long as the creek's clear, and we'll talk about that in depth more, this thing can kick on whenever it wants and fill the tank up. So that float valve goes down, it calls for the pump to come on, tank fills up, float switch rises, shuts off by itself, completely automated. Now I can turn this switch on and I can override and make this pump come on if I want to. Like if there's a storm coming and we want to fill this tank up before the creek gets muddy. I've already kind of spilled the beans on that one. We're going to talk about that more though. I'll show you. So I can override it, or I can turn them both off to where they can't come on. I can turn this pump off and it can't come on, even if the float switch calls for it to come on. So anyways, we got some spare filters. What else? Oh, we keep heaters in here. In the wintertime, we keep these space heaters in here so that we, you know, they don't have to be running. It doesn't have to be 100 degrees in here, but you know, anything above freezing is good. You don't want this place to freeze up and pipes busting. You don't want none, you know, we don't want none of that. So, trying to think about other stuff. I got ball valves before and after every filter, so I can isolate a certain. If I want to change just this filter, I'm going to drain the whole system out and turn the ball valves off. Change that filter, turn it back on, no problem. I've learned ball valves and plumbing are your friend. You want to be able to isolate things. You don't want to have 100 gallons of water spilling out under 50 pounds of pressure, you know, whenever you go to mess with anything. So, yeah, we got that. This here is going to be a future feed to the shop. It's underground. It goes outside underground. It comes up in the shop. On the outside of the shop, I haven't done anything with this yet. But it's here when I need it. What else? Well, let me regroup and we'll come back to you in a minute and I'll explain more stuff. Okay, so I just tried to gather my thoughts a little bit and I want to, you know, try to show you guys everything because I know some people out there might move to a place where they can possibly draw water from a creek. You know, it's actually been great. I'm not totally honest. We had a well guy come out here right after we moved in. We've been here 3.5 years. So right after we moved in, I was a little bit panicked when I kind of realized that the situation. I just, whatever. So anyways, even the well guy, looking at this whole property, we walked around, talked about it. He came out here twice. We walked around here for an hour both times and tried to come up with a plan. I didn't like where the only places he could possibly drill were, and I also did not like the fact that he said that he couldn't guarantee the quality of the water that would come out of the ground, and also how much was be available and how much it was going to cost. And him and I had a little discussion heart to heart, and I asked him, I said, hey, if this was your place, what would you do? And he said, I would continue doing exactly what has been going on here for 50 years. I'd keep drawing water from that creek. We talked about it. He was supposed to come out here and put a casing in the creek, a shallow one, maybe 10 or 12 feet deep or something like that, put a casing on it and suck water out of that. But that was right before the whole Hoaxid 19 thing started, and yeah, everything hit the fan after that. He never came back. So I just kind of went with what we talked about, and I'll show you what I did in a minute. Anyways, getting back to the pump house. So we talked about these ball valves over here. Those are just to shut off and isolate. Now let's do a 180 and come right back over here to the tank side, because there's a couple more valves I forgot to mention. Now, so I can turn these ball valves off and isolate these filters in the same manner. There's no static pressure on this side. There's a foot valve in the creek that keeps the prime. When the pump kicks on, then there's pressure in the system. Right now there's no pressure. But when it does kick on, there used to be a sediment filter here, a 50 micron sediment filter here. That thing wore out. I cut it out of the system, and I put this hose bib here. This helps if we ever do lose prime, or if something crazy happens. I can turn the pump on, turn these valves off, turn this valve off, and I can divert flow out of a garden hose out of here and get the system cleaned out. If there's any mud ever gets in outside, I can clean it out with this. And so going back to these valves, there's a valve here and there's a valve down here. And I also put a one-way check valve in here. I don't know if this does anything. I did it because I didn't want water just to be able to suck out of the whole system and go dry by draining all into the tank. I didn't know if that could happen, but I put that there. It never has happened because that's there probably, or if it would, I don't know. But these valves here I put here so I could slow down how fast the tank fills, because this pump here can move a lot of gallons per minute. It'll actually overrun the casing that I have out there, and I'll show you. It can suck so much water, it'll suck the casing dry that I have the foot valve in, and then it'll lose its prime. So when these filters are brand new and you have these valves all the way open, it'll do that. It'll overrun the system, it'll suck air into it, it'll lose its prime. So we turn these down almost until they're closed, honestly. And I got a pressure gauge here, and we want this thing running, when it's running, about 40 to 45 psi is its optimum we found. Any lower than that, it's going too fast. If it gets much above 50 to 55, that means the filters are clogging up and they need to be changed. So we turn these valves down, that one and that one, to slow the water through the system, and also so all that bulk of water is not plowing through these filters, because we've had some cheaper filters that the water pressure can actually tear up when they're going too fast through them. So we turn these down. When they start to get clogged up, we open them a little bit more. Like I said, when it gets to be too tight, when the pressure rises too much, we change the filters and go back to zero. Because it'll get down to about 20-25 psi if you let it, when it's running wide open. So I think that pretty much covers inside. Stefan, if you would, start back over here, take a look at the door, and just kind of get a good view of around the whole room so everyone can see what's going on in here, in case they might want to do something similar. Like I said, electrical. Oh, we keep sump pumps in here because every once in a while we like to suck the tank dry, the septic tank, the cistern, whatever you want to call it, the holding tank, and we clean it out. Because there's some sediment, fine sediment still gets in there, no big deal, but it happens. Yep. And then right back to me. Yours truly. All right, so let's go outside, and I'll show you guys the rest of the system. Okay, so we're back outside the pump house. And I know there's a few things that are glaring out here, like this concrete. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But just going back to the electrical, I put that panel in here, and then I completely wired this place. So I've got outside motion sensing lights, one on this corner, one on that corner. It also helps out at night if you have to come out here for any reason. That kicks on by itself when you start walking over here, and it stays on as long as you need it. And it shines over there in the creek. It lights up the doorway, and it lights up the path over here, which we usually take to get out here. All right, so I've added a couple receptacles on the outside, convenience receptacles, GFI. And then this here, if I can open it, this is a 30 amp twist lock. And this is connected to the panel on a 30 amp breaker, I believe. Or it might not be, it might actually be hardwired right to the bus. But the purpose of this is not to plug anything in, it's to put a generator out here and I can run the pump house by itself, isolated from the house and the meter. I can turn off the breaker in the shop that feeds this place, and I can run a generator, and I can run just the pump house in case of a power outage, and we've had plenty out here, believe me. So that's what this is. This is a convenience receptacle. Come on over here. This is the feed from the shop. It goes down underground, nice and deep black, and it goes in the shop over there. You can't see it from over here. Come on. This is the frost resistant. I call it resistant because it has froze. The frost resistant hose bib. This is great. We have this on the unfiltered side of the house side. This feeds off of the pressure tank, but before any filtration happens. So we're not wasting our filters on hose water. Come on over here. We have another convenience receptacle, GFI. If you look up under the eave here, now this place, it didn't ever have this. I closed off these eaves, and this here was a closet door. Can you see this up here? This louvered, I don't know if the camera can pick it up. Come on this side and point back. Come up under here and point up and see if you can see the closet door louvers. You see it in the frame? Now this was a closet door that was in the barn when we moved here. There's one on the other side identical. And I put screen to keep the insects and bugs out of here because there was a million of them in there when we moved in. So this just serves as a breathing apparatus, because the pump house itself is pretty much sealed off from the outside, only except for these louvers and this screen. So that way air can move in and out, humidity can get out, whatever. I don't know. I did it. Works pretty good, as far as I know. So come around this way. We have another light, and this is shining on the intake, which I'll show you in a minute. Shining on the intake, and it shines down the path that we walk to go that way if we want to. So it lights up pretty good at night. This here is something I had to do in January. We had a record-breaking freeze in January here. It got down, it was like negative in the morning, like I think it got down to like -7 or 9, I forget. But it was like that every morning for like 3 or 4 days straight, and it was below freezing for a week. Now, the pipe that comes off of that pump 1, and comes off and goes outside, there's a lot of concrete in here, which we'll talk about too. There's a lot of concrete underneath around this thing. We poured a footer. So I didn't want that pipe to come out and be in the concrete. I wanted to be able to mess with it if I ever wanted to. So it used to come out from at the very base, and it ran along the concrete, and as soon as it got to the edge of my footer, it went down into the ground. All nice and deep, like, I don't know, probably about 3 feet. Goes down. Anyway, it was exposed for about 2 feet here. I had insulation wrapped around it, pipe insulation, and it was fine for a couple of years. Never had a problem with it freezing, nothing like that. This past January, it froze. We weren't able to suck water when we needed it, and almost burned up my pump. So I got this piece of 5-inch PVC, cut the bottom off of it, put a garbage bag over that pipe, bolted this down with Tapcons to the concrete, fixed it solid, and then I filled it full of Loctite foam insulation. And I put the garbage bag over that pipe so that the foam insulation, if I ever wanted to get back at it, isn't stuck to that pipe. I can get this whole thing off and redo it if I had to. And then we had this thing concealed, this pipe concealed with river rock, but it washes away over time. And it got re-exposed. But it doesn't matter because that pipe's covered with about 7 inches of insulation inside this pipe. Or not, maybe not 7, about 5, because it's all the way at the bottom. Anyway, this is our intake. Come over here. It goes underground. Oh, Ethan, go grab a 9/16 or whatever size that is in the impact. And a screwdriver, a pair of channel locks. Okay, so the pipe goes underground to this handhole. You can't see underground, Stefan. Anyways, it goes in here. I got a plumber's union in here. And then I've got a piece of 4-inch PVC conduit that also stubs up in this box, and you'll see that in a minute. That piece of conduit goes down I had an excavator when I did this, so I dug it as deep as I possibly could down to bedrock, down to limestone, solid limestone, which is probably, I don't know, it's at least three feet at bare minimum, or deeper. I'm not sure how deep it was because it was full of water when we did it, but it's deep. I had a little mini excavator. So that piece of 4-inch pipe goes down and it comes out in the creek. Now, over there by that tree, you can see over there across the creek, it's the deepest spot in the creek. Well, in this area, there's a snake over there right now. Look at him, a water snake. See him? Zoom in on him. You see that? See him over there?
Yeah.
Anyway, that piece of 4-inch pipe used to go across the creek, and I had all this dug out, that excavator. I dug it all the way down to limestone, and it's solid underneath all this river rock. It's solid like a floor. Had it all the way dug out, and it used to 90 up over there, under that, and it was right by that tree, so it was protected. Well, we had a crazy storm, flooded this whole place out, moved all this rock, uncovered that pipe. It took that 4-inch pipe and then just turned it downstream, and it broke it where it came out from the dirt here on the bank. Underground, it broke the pipe over, and it was down, it was facing straight downstream with the water, the way it always flows that direction. So I had to fix it. I didn't want to redo that because if it could happen, it can happen again. So cut that pipe off, dug it back out here with the backhoe on my tractor, and then I 90'd it back up, and it 90's up right here. If you can see that. This is the 4-inch pipe. It comes up right here. And I put this big old piece of slab that we found here to protect it. And we keep this area dug out. We keep it clear. There's a piece of sediment cloth over top of the mouth of this pipe. But that's all there is. This pipe is just, we keep it, it's, as far as I know, there shouldn't be any sediment inside the pipe. Or very little, if any. But the foot valve is down inside that pipe. All right, I'm back. So the camera overheated. I was in the middle of talking about the storm and how it destroyed the pipe. Anyway, you get the picture. There's a 4-inch pipe that goes from this handhole right here underground, and it stubs up over there in the creek. Now, we took the cover off this handhole because I was hoping to show you guys what it looks like in here, but I had Stefan fill this with rock in January when we had that really hard freeze, because I was concerned that the pipes inside here would freeze too, and getting them unfroze involves like heat guns and torches and stuff, and I didn't want to do any of that in here and mess with it because it's all buried basically, except for in here when it's exposed. So if you can just imagine, I'm not going to take all this rock out of here right now either. It's protecting everything. So anyways, there's a 3/4 or 1-inch piece of PVC that comes from that pump. Look over here. That comes from the pump house. It goes underground. It turns up in here. It shows up in here. I've got a plumber's union on the end of that pipe. On the other side of the plumber's union, it converts to a barb, which is hose clamped to a piece of flexible 1-inch irrigation pipe. That goes inside that 4-inch pipe that I have, and it acts as a protective casing for the irrigation pipe and the foot valve. Now, if anything ever goes wrong with that piece of irrigation tubing with the foot valve, I gotta change any of that stuff or mess with it. I unscrew the union, and I can literally pull that pipe and that foot valve out from inside the 4-inch casing, and I can drag it out straight on the lawn or in the whatever. I can drag it out straight right here. I can service it, fix it. I can blow out. I never had to blow out the 4-inch casing. It's never gotten full of dirt or anything like that. But if I needed to mess with that, I could. That's the point of this. So with that, let's talk about the what we've done to reinforce this place. So as you guys notice, there's about a 6-inch, no, it's about 5 inches, 6 inches in some places where it bowed. But you see this wall that goes around the outside of the pump house. It's solid concrete. I did that because we had 2 storms that have flooded this, absolutely flooded this property twice since we moved here. According to the locals, it was unprecedented. Never happened before. Might not ever happen again. But I took that precaution so that our pump house wouldn't get flooded again. Because what happens is the creek rises so much, and on the first storm especially, it flooded inside. The inside of the pump house had about 18 inches of water in it, which made me glad I had the pumps and stuff up on those tables that I showed you a while ago, because it kept the pumps out of the water. They would have been underwater if they were on the ground. So I didn't want that to happen again. It sucks. It was terrible. Plus it fills the tank, the septic tank, the holding tank, it fills that up with muddy water too. We gotta suck that out. Pretty much ruins everything. So we took the time to pour this wall around it. And I'll show pictures of everything I'm talking about. Going back in time before that, this septic tank was just sitting here, just like it is now. And the floor, I guess the top of the septic tank, or the floor inside there, comes out to the edge of the structure all the way around. And whoever built this made a layer of concrete, one course of concrete blocks, and then built the walls off that. So that was never supported. There was big gaps where it washed out underneath, and you could kind of see the edge of the septic tank, the slab. And so what we did, we dug around it. Me and the boys, like 3 years ago, we dug around the whole entire thing, and then we poured concrete back in there. So it comes out about 12 inches, and it's about 12 inches deep. And I got it to come up under and make contact with the bottom side of that slab. So basically it has an improvised footer. And that was where I left it. This thing used to be sheet metal or siding all the way down to the footer. It was just like you see here, with no concrete. So after that big flood, I did this concrete. That concrete right there weighs about that's about 7,000 pounds of concrete that we mixed up with concrete mixers and 80-pound bags. The footer, I think, was closer to 8,000 pounds of concrete. So what I did here was I formed out rebar all the way around it. I put probably 500 sheet metal screws into the sheet metal so the concrete would stick to it, would have something to grab it by. And then I've got 4-inch deck screws and other lag bolts and whatever I used, I forget, going into the studs of the building, and they're sticking out, and the rebar is tie wired to that, and this thing has a full rebar cage around it. And then we formed it, obviously, and we poured it. And it's worked out great. This has protected it since then. We had a flood since. It didn't come in the building. Now if you walk around over here, it also makes it just pretty much, this place is built like a brick crap house, if you know what I'm saying. Come over here, Stephen. So you can see how thick it is here. And I added these before we ever did the concrete. I put this aluminum because the corners, whoever put this siding on here just had it, the siding was here, and there was a gap where it met in the corner. So I put these aluminum L channels on here a long time ago, but they're now poured in with the concrete. And you can see how thick this really is. How thick that is. And you can see down here where the footer is. So this is all, and of course I've got rebar, I drilled down into the footer, and I've got rebar crammed down in there, tap cons, tie wire. This thing's all one solid unit. So what I did with the door was I formed out around the door, and I gave it this big threshold so that obviously I couldn't have it go straight across. We wouldn't be able to get in and out, right? So I came up with, I just kind of figured a height off the top of my head, and I came up with that. This keeps a lot of dirt, stuff from being tracked in, bugs. It keeps a lot of stuff out. Inside the pump house stays really clean because of this. Now, my original plan was to build, get a piece of sheet, thicker sheet metal, plate steel, aluminum, diamond plate, aluminum probably, so it's not so heavy, and put concrete anchors, threaded, like expansion anchors or studs, something, into the edges of the concrete around here, and have the piece of metal that fits over top of those, and I can secure them with bolts in case there's a super storm coming again and we know it's coming. We can put that piece of metal across here with some kind of gasket and totally seal off the door, because the water ain't never going to get that high. And if it does, then oh well, I don't know what to tell you. But I haven't had to do that. I never did that. And the water flows downstream that way anyways at all times. And it's very fast moving. So the water comes around this thing if it ever does get that high. And it's low pressure on this side, so it'd be kind of tough for it to be, you know, up to here or anything like that when it's traveling fast that way. So I still will eventually want to build that piece of metal. That's a sidebar. Anyway, that's what we got. That's the pump house in a nutshell. And let me regroup if I have any more thoughts, and I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so one last thing. I just want to talk about the creek a little bit. Now, all creeks obviously are different. Our creek rides the whole length of our property. It basically cuts our property, cuts about a third of our property off. The rest of it goes uphill that way. Anyway, this creek, according to the guy that lived here before us, he was here over 20 years, he said the creek never ran dry. Ever. Since we've been here, going on 3.5 years, it'll be 4 years in November. So, and right now it's June, middle of June. So, I've never seen this creek go dry. I can tell you that about 250 yards upstream, up this creek, is where the spring that feeds this creek comes out of the ground. There's a big rock formation up there across the street. There's actually a bridge under the street for the water to flow. And it comes down here. And it flows 24/7. It's ice cold. Even in the middle of summer, right now it's the middle of June, you walk in there with your sandals on, it's going to get your attention. It's probably 50 degrees. And as long as it's not raining and storming, it's crystal clear at all times. So it's a great water source for us. I don't know what your creek's like, obviously, but if you have a similar situation where you know it's clean, then, you know, this might be for you. This water has been so clean. The first time I changed out the quartz glass and the UV light inside there on that on that purification system, I was expecting the quartz around that light to be browned or tinted or dirty. It was crystal clear. The only thing we have in this water is sediment. That's the only problem. So that's why we have the filters. There is sediment, obviously, there's going to be, but the water was tested when we moved in by an inspector. It passed the test with just no filters at all. When I tell you that the only thing in that pump house was a pressure tank that had a bad bladder and a pump, that was it. There was no filters. That guy that lived here before us lived here like that probably the whole time. He was here and never had a filter. And it passed the inspection for the house. You know, they test the water, they run it for half an hour. They run the faucet for a half an hour, and it kept up, and it did it. Somehow, some way. It blows my mind, but it did, looking back. Well, this water is remarkably clean, and it's not hard. There's no iron in it. It doesn't have any funny smells. The animals drink it. Never had a problem with any of it. The only thing is we have sediment, so we have all those filters just to protect our plumbing, because before we had filters, the toilets and the faucets, I had to replace the faucets in whole, and the toilet I had to replace the insides because of sediment damage to the rubber seals and whatnot. Otherwise, we just have paper filters. We have the UV light. It came with the setup, and it's just another added layer of protection for us in case anything did get in, any kind of bacteria. We're not going to ingest it. Plus, I got filters behind the refrigerator for the ice maker, and our drinking water, we use a Berkey. So we take the water out of the tap, dump it in the Berkey, and that's what we drink. Ultra clean water. It's been wonderful. So let me regroup and come back with some final thoughts. I really hope you guys enjoyed this presentation about the pump house. Like I said, it's been in this condition with that system, that well system, and the way it is for close to almost 3 years. I forget exactly when I put it in, but it's been basically trouble-free. You know, what we got to do is we got to stay ahead of the storms. So we watch the radar, You know, like I said, normally if it's not going to rain, there's no rain forecasted for 10 days on the radar, on the apps, on the phones and whatnot. You can just tell, you know, the weather. We don't have to really come out here. You could close the door, it'll do its thing. You check on it once in a while, make sure the filters aren't all clogged up. Otherwise, it's pretty much maintenance free, just filters. Excuse me. Like I said though, we stay ahead of the storms. If we know something's coming that's gonna make the creek rise and get muddy, we come out here and we override the pump and we turn it on and we fill that tank all the way to the top till it's almost touching the floor. And then we got about 1,200 gallons, I think, is what that thing can hold, of water until the storm's gone. And the beauty of this place is if the creek rises and gets crazy and gets muddy to where you don't want to intake that and ruin filters, it comes and goes. It's about, depending on how hard it rains, it's anywhere from 12 hours on a mild rain where the creek, it rains enough to make the creek muddy. It'll turn to like a hue of blue and then be back clear, you know, within a half a day or so. If it gets crazy and rains a lot, you're looking at 24 hours. But the water comes and goes. It don't stay anywhere for long around here. It's weird. We live on a downhill, pretty steep grade. And this water flows and it comes and goes. So the water that's in that tank, as long as we have it full before the storm comes, we've got enough to last for a couple days, and we also are more conservative with water inside the house. So anyways, if you found any of this content helpful, entertaining, or both, I'd appreciate if you like, subscribe to my channel. You know, I'm doing this, you know, for the benefit of others. You know, also I enjoy making these videos. I want to keep making them, and if there's any kind of you know, viewership involved, I'd appreciate it. You know, like and subscribe. That's all I ask. And in closing, you know, I'd like to say, you know, if you guys have any questions or comments, please ask. Feel free. I'll respond. You know, I don't get many comments on my videos, so if you ask me a question, I'll be more than happy to answer it. If you want me to show you anything else or talk about anything else, comment. Other than that, that's all I got. That's the pump house. I'm Jason at Tennessee Mountain Homestead, and I'll see you next time.